the economy's over here, social justice is over here, environmental issues are over here. I think what the progressives are stronger at than most of the moderates or many of the Republicans is understanding that all of those things are intrinsically linked. And certainly, again, I'm here, I guess, the de facto progressive, but I don't consider myself a progressive Democrat. I'm a member of the Green Party, which I don't know if that puts me to the left or to the right or whatever, but we share a lot of the same values. But for me, I didn't leave the party left me.
I tend to look at it in a different way. I think that the answer to your question, PO taxpayer, is no. I think that the progressives focusing on social issues is where they're the strongest. So it was smart for them because that's where they're actually right. Things like gay marriage, reasonable gun control, reproductive rights, that's where they're going to actually win battles. If they focus on the economic issues, I think they're wrong. I think most Rhode Islanders think they're wrong. And I think that, focusing on the social issues wasn't their undoing. What was their undoing was trying to get too much too fast. In other words, if they had taken the approach that someone like Scott Slater takes, which is, I'm going to work within the system and get good progressive legislation passed, they would be much further ahead than they are now, which is basically, go sit in the back of the room and say whatever you want to say.
Well, I think that first of all, when Marcello came out and said, I want to put master lever, ethics reform, and there was one more on the
38
floor.
Studios.
It was the 38 Studios investigation. Those are the things we're gonna bring right to the floor within 30 days. I thought that was a pretty bold statement.
Sure, but again,
because I think the master lever is a widespread issue. That's not a one party issue by any stretch. And I think that there's not a person in Rhode Island that doesn't think our state house needs a little bit of ethics oversight and reform.
I can grant, and even and most people,
given the events of the last couple of weeks,
and the vast majority of the people who admit that they've studied the 38 Studios issue all say that we should not pay the 38 Studios bonds. I agree with you on what you're saying. However, I'm going to go back to the point you made before, where you said that there are political realities when you were defending Representative Marcello. The House itself, the House leadership, has to deal with political realities. I'll give you an example. If they pass the ethics bill the way they did, 3 or 4 years ago, and they send that to the Senate, they're going to tick the leaders of the Senate off because the leaders of the Senate are dead set against this ethics bill. And what may very well have happened is Majority Leader Paiva Weed may have said, you know what, you've now aggravated me, forget about gay marriage, it's not happening. So there needs to be some sensitivity, too, between the two bodies. The House doesn't operate in a vacuum. And I think that's why you haven't seen an ethics bill pass, or I think that's why you haven't seen the master lever pass, because I think the Senate is dead set against it.
A perfect example of that is also payday lending. I mean, everybody was on board with payday lending reform, but magically,
except Bill Murphy.
I feel the temperature rising from the second floor, Tony. Be careful. I think the gates to hell are going to open. Just let me interject for a moment. Russ, I get your point completely. I mean, it's, it'd be naivete if to say anything else. But there is that whole, we could, I don't know, get together as a group and do what's right for the taxpayer. Sorry.
It's always about you, isn't it?
And by the way, I can't imagine why Senator Paiva, I made my bones by supporting a former speaker who beat up his wife, Weed, and Rubbers Ruggiero would have anything against, I don't know, reform legislation. But that's just me. So how did Scott Slater come out of this? I mean, you guys are saying to me...
On top.
All right, is he the new powerhouse progressive?
Yes. I don't know what you think. I say yes.
I would say... I don't think he's been the most vocal member of the Progressive Caucus, but I think Russ is right when he said, he really works within the system to champion the causes that he thinks need championing. I think, and maybe,
and a good guy. He's a really great guy too. I have to.
They're all nice guys. Well, until you write something bad about them on RI Future, and then they hate you. So maybe the discussion we need to have is why are we having this hurdle between the House and the Senate? Okay, why are we seeming to have this? If we can get 75 people in the House to say yes, or a majority of those 75 to say yes on something, how can that then move over to the Senate and be shut down by a smaller group of people, basically.
Sure. I guess the answer is that there's different personalities and there's different interests. There's different, But then you're going to ask me the question why, and that's a great question. I don't really have an easy answer for that.
But I think the word you use there, interests, okay? And I think that this speaks directly to P.O.'s point is, can they just get together and do what's right for the people of Rhode Island? I've had this conversation with journalist after journalist at the State House. Guys that have been working the State House beat for years, and they'd say, can they just do what's right for once?
It sounds so easy to say that, but if we go around this room and we ask Tony what's right, and we ask Christine what's right, we ask P.O. what's right, we ask Dave what's right, and then you ask me what's right, we're going to get 5 different answers. That's the reality here. It's not that easy just to say. And I think this is my big critique against the progressives, is they think they see the world in black and white at times, and I just think there's a lot more gray than that. By the way, I think the Tea Party's worse or just as bad.
And I can tell you, I get into a lot of trouble with my progressive friends because I don't see that black and white a lot of times. And I'll give you an example of this. And this is about how both sides really kind of maneuver the language to their own benefit. So a couple of years back, one of the reps from Woonsocket, John Breen, proposed building a waste incinerator, a waste-to-energy incinerator in the city of Woonsocket. And the environmental community came out and was like, no, bad, cancer-causing, smoke, blah, blah, blah. At the time, I was working as an environmental reporter, so I said, well, what does a reporter do? A reporter goes to an incinerator and sees how it operates.
Well, how dare you?
Well, and this is what happened, So I went out to the incinerator, and I'm like, everybody's saying, oh, they just want to burn everything. And I'm walking around this plant, and there's recycling bins. And I'm like, they clearly don't want to burn everything if they have recycling bins in the incinerator. They're not just tossing it out into the boiler. And, dug into it. And frankly, even from our own EPA says that waste with adequate recycling programs, waste incineration is actually preferable to waste landfilling.
One can argue, and working in the truck business, that in many situations the science is so good that the air coming out of those facilities are often cleaner.
Well, I wouldn't say cleaner, but if you look at so one of the big
things like particulate counts.
Well, it wasn't about being the opposite side of the issue. I think that the argument was misframed, because the real argument should have been, how can we boost our recyclable material intake? How can we start to utilize those resources? We got to start thinking about food waste in the state of Rhode Island, thinking about some kind of composting facility or some way to utilize that, because it's not waste. We need to start thinking of those things as resources, not waste. We have 20 years left to put stuff in our landfill. After that, there's not enough open acreage in this state to build another one. And if you think throwing out your garbage is expensive now, wait till you have to put it on a barge or a train and ship it out of the state or overseas.
That's a great point. In our, we tend to think about the problem of today, and an issue like that will be a problem of 20 years from now. But if we actually be proactive in the state of Rhode Island, I know this is like this big foreign concept, we can end up ahead of a problem instead of always behind a problem. So I couldn't agree with you more there.
Yeah, and I think, you see it on the local level too, where we have a group of people in Woonsocket that's actually trying to recall 2 city councilors because they voted to take the state's money and reinstate full-day kindergarten, okay? And they're saying the taxpayers can't afford it, and I get it. But then, the very same week, there's legislation coming out of the State House saying that this may very well be mandatory by 2015. So, yeah, if that's going to be the case, we should take the state's money and try to get out ahead of it and iron out all the problems before the state makes it mandatory on us, and we're scrambling at that point.
Well, in true Chris Farley-esque form, P.O. and I will be long dead in 20 years, so what do we care what happens?
Thank you. But that's the Rhode Island attitude. Thank you for that.
More. Well, I'll be chasing children off my lawn, and I want my lawn to be nice and clean.
But does the social justice crowd, the progressives, the Greens, the whole stew, does their insistence on everything in life being a litmus test ultimately create enough of a reservoir of bad will that when something like this happens, there's no safety hatch. There's
Yes.
no escape.
Quick answer, yes.
It does, but I think it happens on the far right and the far left.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Okay,
well,
because and what it leads to is a lack of what we're doing right here, engaging, talking about the problems, and actually finding out that we probably agree more often than we disagree.
But let me just point out one thing, just for the record, just so we're all as we move forward and the show grows and evolves, we have to refer to the far right as in the past tense. Because as we mentioned at the top of the show,
They no longer exist. They're now insiders, to use their own word. They're now insiders.
Right.
I predict that the insider will from time to time announce that she is an outsider fighting for freedom when it suits her to.
Well,
I wouldn't bet you on that. I wouldn't take
I'm
that.
not taking those odds.
Yeah.
so where does the progressive movement go now? I mean, you've got Scott Slater, and you've got a handful of, and I use the term backbencher intentionally because they're so way back. They're somewhere in Pawtucket. They're sitting. Okay, I talk about a fall from grace. Do they have any collective clout left in this new administration? Russ?
I think the battle is going to move to the primary elections that are going to take place in September. I think there's going to be a ton of candidates running. I think the speaker is going to be, recruiting and funding candidates in districts where there are progressives currently holding office. And I think the progressives are going to be recruiting and funding and helping candidates were in Speaker Mattiello's allies' districts. And I think it's going to come down to that. I think that September could go one of two ways. It could come out where the progressives are in a position to take over the House of Representatives, God forbid, or it could go the other way where Speaker Mattiello strengthens his position and we get more moderation up there at the State House.
Our own wild side Clyde is considering running against Senator Josh Miller. He is in that district.
I actually spoke to two people over the weekend that are interested in running as Greens, one for a state rep seat and one for City Council of Providence.
So your prediction, in one sense, that one benefit out of this is that it could radicalize the socialist movement in the state.
What I would really like to see is not a go along to get along house. I would like to see some dissent. I would like to see some back and forth between the moderates and the progressives about how are we going to move the state forward. And I think that's the key issue. And I think that saying that jobs in the economy it's like, no duh. Like, but of course, that's the smartest
Dave,
thing.
that requires people with spines, or what we called cojones last week on the program. And I think that's why there was such a large amount of go along to get along, because a lot of these people in about 5-6 months' time have to go out and knock on doors and explain why they should be reelected.
So you're predicting a pretty brutal primary season?
Yeah, I think it's going to be totally knock down, drag out, and I think that you could see it's going to be either a resurgence of more progressive candidates, or like Russ said, there's going to be more moderates because the House leadership is going to be out doing their thing.
And let's face it, would we really have it any other way in Rhode Island than to have a bloodbath political season? Is there any other way to do it?
Right?
Come on.
So, but one of the
sport.
things that's going to work against progressives in this upcoming election is the fact that same-sex marriage did get passed, because there was a lot of money coming into this state to fund progressive
and give
candidates.
Speaker Mattiello some credit. He had the courage to do the right thing, and he voted for it because that's what his heart, that's where his heart was.
I'm endorsing bringing back the duel.
Aaron Burr. All right.
Only if they're televised.
Of course they would be.
Twin River.
P.O.
Exactly.
In what could have been your congressional seat, because the rumor is that Mr. Cicilline is tied in with the Fox thing. In true political opportunist form, the Republicans came up with a warm body for CD1.
And
Warm body.
and from what I've read, he seems like a nice young chap, but oh my God, lambs to the slaughter. We're still waiting to see if Doreen Costa is going to be able to cough up the first month's payment on the pool. Never mind actually fund a congressional campaign.
Do we have a name on that campaign?
No, we don't. we refuse to give out yet another bogus name.
Well, we know. I mean, is Steve Maciel still?
Jonathan Maciel. I believe, in fact, he is still engaged as an independent, but we'll see. Well, time will tell. Jonathan, if you're out there, please touch base with the show. Let us know how you're doing.
By the way, our top podcast for listenership was Mr. Maciel.
There you go. As we roll into